you.
Welcome, welcome, and good to see you, Andre, my good friend for many, many years. It's so nice to see you, and I've made you co-host as well. What a privilege it is to actually discuss these things. To discuss the Temple Mount and discuss. To be able to discuss the Temple Mount. To discuss the Temple Mount. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's actually super wonderful to be able to have this time together and to be able to deal with these really, really interesting issues. You know what I'm saying? These issues are, the whole world is watching the Temple Mount. I mean, not only because of the rockets that happened recently, but for thousands of years, I mean, over 3,000 years, it's been the Jewish capital. Jewish people pray towards that place. Every synagogue faces that place. When people are praying, they turn towards it. And it's just, for me, I just find it such a mystery that Christians and people around the world often don't understand why and what is that place and where did the temple stand, and God placed his name there. Wow, he's going to return there. Wow, people. And so you are, if I can say, a very, very skilled historian and a teacher, and just the way that you bring about the Bible and historical facts. Leaving aside that we're friends for so many years, I just feel that you really have been blessed in a position to explain things in a way that's in depth. And I really appreciate your ministry and the way that you serve. And you had an amazing virtual tour recently too, I saw, where you were sharing. And so you've really been able to express to the world why Jerusalem and why Temple Mount. So feel free to share a little bit about yourself first. You're married? You have some children?
Yes, first of all, Chaim, it's such an honor and a joy to be with you and those watching. And great to catch up again after all of these years. We've known each other since teenage years, since what, 20? We've known each other over 20 years, I think.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, of course. And now I'm married with 3 children. And I've been a tour guide for the last 10 years or so. I was involved in local ministry as well. And one of the reasons that we're doing this is because due to the situation and the COVID regulations and all of the sudden stop of tourism caused many people to think, what can we do? And for me, it was a journey of really getting to wait on the Lord and to see, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And the word of God was so clear that this ministry to the nations has to continue. And so these things about Israel and understanding, even if we're not physically here, but we can still virtually put our feet on the ground, so to speak, and get into the word, because the word, well, that's what we have. We have the word of God everywhere. And so, but get that perspective. And so this is part of this, of a series of teachings that the Lord put in my heart. And we'll take you to the Temple Mount today to get this introduction of this amazing place that is way, way beyond that what most people think. And you have to unpack this place layer by layer. And so we'll start with this idea today and see how God leads.
Absolutely. I mean, you could probably do a series of 10 episodes just on Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, the wars, the history, the archaeology, but even also prophetically. A lot of people look only in the past and they forget that there's a future for all of us together as servants of a great creator, and a plan for Jerusalem in the future. And then, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's vital to look in the past before you can understand the future. People so focused on the future, and they see the future so foggy and so mysterious, And the reason is because they don't know how to look in the past. And because God gave us the whole word from Genesis to Revelation, you can't just look at the end without looking at the, behind and see how it was laid down. So this is the whole picture. To get the picture, we must take our journey back in time first and study this, so that we'll have this clear picture. And the truth is, the picture does get clear when you study the Bible, the scripture in the context. Then the future gets much more clear.
That's true. That's true. Well, that's amazing. I'm very honored. We're all very honored to have you, and thank you for that, for sharing. And do you think, just before, one more thing, do you think that some of the rockets that fell on Israel not that long ago, I mean, there's even rockets that came, a few that came from Lebanon recently. I'm glad that kind of died down. But do you feel that a lot of it has to do with, not just three major monotheistic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, but that the spiritual plan that we were talking about, trying to stop a prophetic plan in a way for that place?
You said at the beginning that the whole world is watching this place, the Temple Mount, which you can see behind me, this whole epicenter of the world spiritually.
Yeah.
And this is true. And as much as we're getting near the time of the return of the Lord, the more we're advancing into that, the more tension grows, the more pressure grows, the more they're clashing of powers around this place. And so because of the reality of the regulations of that place, this is so important to understand for everybody who's here with us. We have to understand that everything really is tied into this little platform. Everything, all the wars that Israel was fighting with was about this. And the wars in the future that will happen will be because of this. And it's not me saying, that's what the Bible says. So we have to understand this, and then we will even have a much better perspective how to understand and how to comprehend the events that are about to take place. And so definitely we're really, really touching the most how do I say, boiling
burning
pot
issue.
with all of the things. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
If I can encourage everyone who's watching right now, please share this. Like, take a minute to share this, because I'll tell you why. People don't know. They look at CNN, they look at all kinds of media sources. Some of those aren't giving the full picture, aren't giving a true perspective even at times. And so I just want people to feel free to share this when you're hearing a word from Jerusalem, from Israel. Feel free to share it. People out there need to know the facts. And so feel free to share it. Yeah, so the stage is yours, Andre.
All right, so I'm going to be sharing screen, and I'll even try to play a little video. I don't know if the sound will go, but I hope it will. But we'll begin our journey here in this on the subject. This is a study approach to understanding the Temple Mount, and there are several stages. So on purposely will not go deep into the scriptures at the moment, because in order to go into the scriptures, we have to have an introduction, a general overview. And so we'll know how to approach this place from the modern time and on. So first of all, let's see if you can hear this. This is just a short video that just general put us all on the same page. It's like a minute or so.
The Temple Mount, known to Muslims as the Haram Esh-Sharif, a hill located in the old city of Jerusalem, is one of the most important religious sites in the world. It has been venerated as a holy site for thousands of years by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Hope you can hear the sound.
The present site is dominated by three monumental structures from the early Umayyad period: the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, and the Dome of the Chain, as well as 4 minarets. Herodian walls and gates with additions dating back to the late Byzantine and early Islamic period cut through the flanks of the mount. Currently, it can be reached through 11 gates, 10 reserved for Muslims and 1 for non-Muslims. According to the Bible, the Jewish temple stood on the Temple Mount. According to Jewish tradition and scripture, the first temple was built by King Solomon, the son of King David, in 957 BC, and destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. Jewish tradition maintains it is here that a third and final temple will also be built. The location is the holiest site in Judaism and is the place Jews turn towards during prayer. Umayyad caliphs commissioned the construction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock on the site. The dome was completed in 692 AD, making it one of the oldest extant Islamic structures in the world. The Al-Aqsa Mosque rests on the far southern side of the mount, facing Mecca. The Dome of the Rock currently sits in the middle, occupying or close to the area where the Holy Temple previously stood. In light of the dual claims of both Judaism and Islam, it is one of the most contested religious sites in the world.
So, we're in Jerusalem, of course. You got a general picture. Here's an aerial view of Israel with Jerusalem marked. So this is where we are in comparison to the rest of geographic parts of Israel. You see Sea of Galilee up on the northern side, Jordan River. Yeah, that's for you, Chaim. Sea of Galilee in the south, Jordan coming right down to the Dead Sea. Of course, the coastal area here and the mountains of Samaria, mountains of Galilee, mountains of Samaria, Judea, Jerusalem, and down toward Hebron and Beersheba. We're in Jerusalem, and this is where we are. And here we are focusing on this platform that you see in front of you. The most contested, as the video said, one of the most contested sites, religious sites in the world. This is the most contested site in the world, for sure. And it's been like this, and we'll understand more as we go. So let's first of all understand the size. The size is now approximately 37 acres. It's about 20 soccer fields. It's pretty big. It's not small, it's big. And it wasn't like that, because when we think of a mountain, we're thinking a mount. Okay, so it has a peak, and then it has the slopes. And so the topography here had a mountain with a peak and slopes, but it was modified over centuries, especially in the great renovations in the Roman period, when King Herod and other leaders after him, what they did is they're really kind of added sections on the sides, on the slopes. So if you look at the Golden Dome over here, that is approximately where was the peak of the mountain. It's probably, I'm saying probably, I'll explain to you all different ideas, probably where Solomon built the temple, and where later on the second temple was built by Zerubbabel first, and then renovated by King Herod. So this was like the peak of the mountain, and then there was a slope to the south. So down below, you see the second area here of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is on the way down the slope. Down below, you see a highway really over here, small highway, and then it goes down into the section we call the City of David. So and then it was a side on the right and the side on the left. And so what happened is that there was a construction of 4 retaining walls. This is the wall of the southern wall, that the lower part of the wall here, now this is modern picture, but the lower part of the wall where my pointer is, this is still original stones from 2,000 years ago, from Jesus' time, from the New Testament, from Roman period. So this corner is original, and this corner, left corner, which is southwest corner, is also original. Okay, now the western wall goes alongside the western side, the eastern wall over here, but the northern wall is really unknown exactly. We don't know exactly where was. Today, it's this like that. It's like a square, like a rectangular structure, but we don't know how it was exactly, and that will help us to understand farther on how we understand the location of the temple. Anyhow, if we would have gone right on the tour and we would go up on the Temple Mount, which is possible when you come to Israel. It's possible to tour. I love taking people up to the platform. First thing we would do is I'll take you up to the Dome of the Rock. To the Dome of the Rock was built at the end of the 7th century CE by Muslims. This is, until today, by the way, the oldest functioning Muslim structure in the world. Let me repeat myself. The oldest functioning Muslim structure in the world. The other structures, of course, were built earlier in Mecca and Medina and Saudi Arabia, but they have been renovated, they've been destroyed and rebuilt many times. But this one, as it was built, okay, approximately at 691 CE, it still stands. It's been renovated on the outside and the inside, but it's still standing, and it's shaped as an octagon. Octagon is 8 sides. And the reason why it's built in an octagon, scholars think that when the Muslims came, they took over the Byzantine Empire. Now, the Byzantines were Christians who built many churches. And the way Byzantines would build a place, a church, for commemoration of certain event, they would build it in the shape of an octagon. Okay, so in a way, Muslims might have the Byzantine architects that helped them to build it. The question is, why did they build this structure? And what was here before, right? The history, the research and the history and the academics, they say that during the Byzantine era, there was really nothing here on the Temple Mount. Was really, many people even agree that this was a place for dumping the garbage. I'm serious. So when you think the Byzantines, the Roman Christianized empire, what they did was really neglecting the roots of the temple, the ruins, whatever it was there, just made a place of trash, really. And then later on, that they still had the traditions, but later on, when the Muslims come, they remember, I mean, they hear from people that there was something going on, it was something important. But listen carefully. In the book of Quran itself, Jerusalem is not mentioned, not even once. It's not there. It does not exist there. So it's a later tradition that happened approximately about 40 years after Muhammad's death. So he died, and 40 years later, they come here and they built the structure to commemorate an event that is written in Quran that doesn't have a place attached to it, but the later interpretations attach an event to Jerusalem while it's not originally there. Okay, and that event is about Muhammad's journey to a mosque on the edge of the world, or on the side of the world, whatever you want to call it, and Qatseh, Al-Aqsa, Qatseh, at the edge. And there he is being elevated up into heaven to receive the commandment of 5 times a day prayer, Muslim prayer. Where that event happened? In the mosque on the edge. Where the mosque on the edge? Later Muslim scholars attach it to Jerusalem. And therefore, this building is built to commemorate a location from which Muhammad ascended. That is why it's called a dome over a rock, because from that rock, he ascended, he jumped up from the rock. There is still a tradition of a little like a box that is engraved in the rock inside. I've been inside, and you could stick your hand through a little hole, and you kind of feel something, and that should be a footprint of Muhammad's feet. Okay, it should be. Nobody is able to look in. It's just, that's what it said. However, it's been renovated many times, and there is a rock. We'll look inside in a moment, but I first want you to see the outer decorations. Now, it is an octagon. It has a beautiful mosaics around, geometrical figures. Here you can see the upper part of the decorations are phrases, quotes from the Quran. It doesn't have any images. This is, like early Muslim time. In Islam, they don't do images as well. So it's very geometrical, very beautiful. The dome itself is actually covered with real gold. There's a metal covered with gold. I don't exactly remember how much worth of gold there is, but it's original gold. This was a gift of King Hussein of Jordan back in the late 60s. In the late 60s, Jordan, the country of Jordan, had a control over the Temple Mount. And so King Hussein, Abdallah, King of Jordan, he has donated money and actually covered it, made a covering of real gold. So it's really nice and beautiful. The lower part is just marble that's been renovated many times, naturally, just different shapes of the marble. If you look at my pointer here, there's this little booth. And right above this little booth, there is a natural engraving. It's not engraving, it's a natural, how would I say this? A picture. Not drawn, it's just natural style as the marble goes. You know, it has different colors, you know, back and forth, just kind of shapes, the way the marble is naturally. And so they have this little shape here over the booth. And if you look carefully here, I'm making a little zoom of it. Look what it looks like. Look what it looks like. In fact, if you see it, it actually looks really freaky. You can see here is a face, an image of a face with eyes, with horns, with his teeth. I mean, this is like a picture of Satan or a demon or something like that. But I'm not joking. That is exactly what is on this marble plate.
You know, I've never seen that. I've been here so many times. I've been inside. I've never seen that. Wow.
So next time you come right to the booth and look above. I like to show it to the groups, and I kind of laugh about it. Just say, you know, sometimes the Muslim evangelists that are there, and they tell about how peaceful Islam is and all of that. And when I look at this picture, and that's not even intended, it's just there. Somehow it's there. I'm like, you know, it's just, don't forget who's in charge here. You know, that's kind of a sense. It's just that's okay. That's just a little freaky. Okay, so if I'm not convinced, you know, that there's some spiritual, dark spiritual forces involved, now I'm pretty convinced. You know, anyhow, let's move on. What's going on inside? What's happening inside? It's really pretty cool what's going on. So first of all, there is a rock. Okay, here's a picture of the rock. The dome is actually over a rock. It's part of the bedrock of the mountain. We've talked about the mountain. Okay, and so on the rock, they're different. There's been constructions. There've been some Crusader, some Byzantine, all kind of early Muslim. So it's really a mess. But that's not important. What's important is that is inside or underneath this section is a little cave, and here on the right side, here on the top corner, you can see the cave. And in the cave right now, this is a place where Muslim Muslim worshippers, they pray toward Mecca. Here they are, men on the left side, women on the right, and they're praying toward Mecca, toward the south. Of course, archaeologists and historians have suggested, and they think that probably there is a good chance that this cave existed, or part of this cave existed already a long time ago. Maybe even could be some sort of a tomb of somebody important back in the Canaanite time, maybe early Canaanite period. Now, we know of somebody important in the Canaanite period who lived in this place, and this guy's name was Melchizedek. He was a priest of the God Most High. That dates to the time where they think was already going on something, maybe some kind of a tomb or some kind of a memorial or something. That possible, that makes sense, anyhow, connects us to the Bible a little bit. Now, Jewish tradition says that this stone is called the foundation stone. A foundation stone meaning that this is the place from which the universe was created. This is not biblical. This is the Jewish tradition, the foundation stone. And on this stone, as recorded in the Bible, Abraham comes and brings Isaac to sacrifice Isaac. And of course, angel comes in and stops him. Muslims, some of them believe that on this stone, Abraham tried to sacrifice his son, Ishmael.
Right.
Some of them believe that it was here. Some believe it was another mountain in Saudi Arabia, but some of them believe it was here. That's how that all connected. Anyhow, the temple, according to Jewish tradition, was here, and this place was where the Holy of Holies stood. You can see here at the bottom, right bottom corner, you can see the measurements of the Holy of Holies right on this foundation stone. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. This is what we're talking about. So the greatest desire of the Jews would be to come and to restore this again. And there's the debates and arguments about it. We'll get into this in a moment, but I wanted you to see how it's built. Okay, the rock, the dome, and all of that. Okay. If there, by the way, if there are questions as we go, if you have a question, please go ahead and on Chaim, you'll help me and just bring them up, the questions, just as we go.
Feel free to write it, and I'll read them out. No problem. Just write it in the comments.
All right, we're moving on. So besides the location of the Dome of the Rock, the authenticity of that place, outside when we tour, we see other buildings. We see, for instance, here the Dome of the Chain, which is right next to the Golden Dome, and was built by the way at the same time, late 7th century. What it was used for, well, nobody really knows. They think it could be like a model, like a prototype. While they constructed the big building, they made a small prototype, because just like that. Muslim tradition talks about this dome, that there was a chain hanging down. That's their tradition, like a legend. There was a chain hanging down, and if there were two people that had an argument between them, and a judge was not sure who is right, that these two people would come and stand under the chain, and whoever is right, then the chain would move toward a righteous man. Okay, so that's just a Muslim tradition over it. I have to add, though, something. There is an eschatological belief in the Islam about this place. The place has to do with the Dome of the Rock and all of this area, the Dome of the Chain, and these little gates that you can see here behind. And there are several of these gates that lead up to the upper section. And so they believe that on the last day, there will be a bridge, a tiny bridge, as thin as a hair of a beard. Okay, and so that bridge would connect to the Dome of the Rock, the Temple Mount, to the Mount of Olives. Okay, and so then everybody would have to pass on that bridge, and all the righteous will make it through, and then they would receive the wages for the deeds, and the unrighteous will fall into the Kedron Valley and perish. So that's kind of a mixture with some of the biblical events there as well. Anyhow, there is an eschatological belief that connects to this place. Now, there are also other cool elements, other architecture from 14th century. In general, for us to understand, in 14th century, in the Middle Ages, this was the time when the Temple Mount was mostly renovated by Muslims. Most renovations happened. Okay, most of what we see today has been done there in 14th century. For instance, this big, beautiful washing area. Okay, it's called Khas, of a ruler by the name of Tankiz. And then here you have also the Mameluke period, 14th century, typical madrasa. That's a place for religious Muslim studies. That is one of the sides over there. Also the minarets. And then, of course, here the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Okay, here the Al-Aqsa Mosque is the Great Dome, right? This is the mosque that's been talked about, and the whole thing, especially if you're following the news and different media, mainstream media, speaks about Al-Aqsa, everything about Al-Aqsa, the movements that are about to free Al-Aqsa, etc. All of that speaks about pretty much this building. And because it's like a beginning, this is where it all started, really. And so both of them, this was built right before the Golden Dome, but not as big. It was a small building. Now, later on, was renovated and the big what we see now, but it was a really small building. Anyhow, the building itself built on the southern section of the mountain, southern section. What's interesting is that underneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque, in fact, it's difficult to see right here from this angle, but anyhow, where my cursor is, where my cursor, you can see it, there are a little staircase that leads down. And for those that have been up there, it's still there. And there's another one parallel. This is exactly where the pilgrims 2,000 years ago who would go up to the temple to worship. So it sits
Wow.
right on top of the journey of the pilgrims. And probably it also sits in the place where was the greatest building, basilica. 2,000 years ago, we think of, if you remember Jesus turning the tables upside down, right? You think of that event and the discussions, and when the Pharisees came to him, and all of these discussions happened here in this area. This was a big, huge building that went all along the southern wall. And so it's sitting right next to it. So the sad thing that because Muslims count the whole place holy, not only the mosque holy, but the whole platform, the whole face of the mountain, they think it's holy. They call it holy. And so therefore, you cannot make any archaeological research whatsoever up on the mountain. Because if we would be able to, guess what? We found just dozens and dozens and proofs and artifacts of the second temple period and the first temple period and who knows, and everything. But because we can't, really limit it. That's the biggest challenge, because Muslims claim, and that's true, they claim this. They said, we were here from the beginning. There is nothing that was here before us. Why do they say this? What about the whole history? Guess what? Until today, there is zero archaeological proof of existence of the temple, first temple or the second temple. None of them, besides the historical books. But archaeological artifacts, we don't have them. We don't. And that's why they say, hey, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. I will touch back on it because it gets more interesting. But anyhow, this is one of the things, one of the reasons that they rely. Now when we look at history, let's examine a little bit. Let's make a parallel, the 1st century and 21st century, and of this platform. This is from Israel Museum model of Jerusalem Second Temple period. Here's Dome of the Rock, center, the temple, the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the south part, the great basilica called the Solomon's Porch or Solomon's Portico. We read it in the scriptures about it. Here are the two entrances. You see that? People went underground and entered right up onto the platform. Both of these exist. Both of them exist. You can see they renovated their steps going down. I've been in one of them. It's phenomenal. You can still see the arches underground that Herod has built arches in order to elevate the platform. You see, I told you about the mountain slope, the shape. Okay, here it is. So when we think about it, the most visible point that sticks out is this eastern gate. You see that? And so the eastern gate that faces east here, which was also called in the Bible Gate Beautiful. If you think Book of Acts, remember Peter and John raising up a lame man, the Gate Beautiful, who was asking for money. Gate Beautiful, the gate from which the high priests, they would go out of the temple through the eastern gate here to this gate, up crossing the Kedron up onto the Mount of Olives, especially on the Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, Day of Atonement, etc. Anyhow, when we examine this, we think, wait a minute, what do we have there today? Here's the Dome of the Rock, here's the eastern wall, but wait a minute, the gates that we found today, it's here. Okay, so is this gate original leftover or something that is left from this one? The question is maybe. Okay, because again, this whole place is holy, we cannot excavate. But there are comments, and there was a man who was walking near here at the Muslim cemetery, right outside the gate here, Muslim cemetery. He was walking there during winter time, and he slipped down and he fell between the rocks, and he came out of the hole right here because of the rains. Okay, and he commented. He said, I saw fragments of the arches, and he comments, and that's pretty much the only reference we have, it's very possibly true, of a location of a gate right here. Now, if a gate is right here, then it should be lined up with the temple. If the gate is right here, which it's very good chance that it is, there's also other reasons. If you go on the inside, you can see there's a lot of ideas about it. Now the gate is shut. It's been shut for 500 years already. But if that is the case, then the temple should be aligned with the gate, like here. It should be. But wait a minute. Here, whether there is a shift of a direction, so it's not directed, but okay, imagine temple is here, so temple is a little bit angled. That is a possibility. Don't know. Or maybe the temple wasn't even here, but was right here. But if the temple is right here, then what about this wall here? Then it's not in the middle. So that's what I told you, that we don't know. We're not exactly sure where this wall was or how this wall looked like. We're not sure. There's no evidence, okay, because we can't dig. That's one of the challenge. Anyhow, the reason I'm telling you this is because there are people that say this, and rabbis say, some rabbis say, they say, wait a minute. Actually, if we want to restore the temple, and maybe the temple, because of the gate issue, was not here where the dome is, but was on the north side, more north area, aligned with the gate where my question mark is, then you see this is an empty area. So basically what is possible, well, imagine somebody makes peace in the Middle East. How about building the temple right next to the Dome of the Rock without having to destroy it? That's been a theory for a while. There are other theories, and we'll talk about this later. But anyhow, this is one of the possibilities that maybe, if that is even possible today, I mean, if somebody will in the next several years make peace in the Middle East and the Jews want to build a temple, and they'll start building the temple next door to the dome without destroying it. And that is a possibility as well. All right. Let's just do a little bit with the entrances. Okay, here are the southern wall. Yeah, go ahead.
When someone was asking, when you're talking about entrances, we know that the book of Psalms, we know Yeshua said, you know, my house will be a house of prayer for all nations. You know, there's place for Jews, non-Jews. There's area here for people to come and worship God. Whereas, and they come through these gates from the north, the south, the east, and the west, and they pour through these gates. Now, the question is, like, now, I mean, when a Jewish person or anyone who believes in the Creator, in the God of Israel, goes there, it's like an offense. So who right now does the Jordanian Waqf welcome? Is it just Sunnis or Shiites? Is it any kind of Muslim, and everyone else is kind of discouraged from praying there?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's a great question. What's happening right now? Right now, and it's important to understand, Temple Mount is part of Israel. It's part of Jerusalem. Okay, and so Israel is in charge of this area, of this territory. There are Israeli police that is maintaining the security on the Temple Mount, is making regulations, who is coming in, who is not coming in, security-wise. Israel is responsible for security. Everybody who are armed guards there are Israeli police. Okay, that's number one. So according to Israeli law, everyone can come and visit the Temple Mount. It's possible. Though now there are regulations of how, because this is a holy Muslim site. There has been an agreement that Israel made with a Jordanian Waqf. Waqf is a religious organization in Jordan that is responsible for maintenance of Muslim religious sites in the area of Israel. Okay, it's like an office responsible for this. And so there has been an agreement even after the 6 Days War in 1967, because Israel had, of course, as you know, liberated Jerusalem. The Temple Mount became part of Israel. And so the agreement was that Israel is responsible for security, but religiously they will honor the regulations and restrictions of the Muslim Waqf, of the religious Waqf. So what they do is that they say, okay, we have a certain way of, if you're non-Muslim, how can you visit? You can only visit, you know, obeying these regulations. And there's one gate only that there has a high security level that non-Muslims can come in, okay, and they have to care, you know, honor the dress code, etc., all that kind of stuff. And they cannot be up there during the prayer times, so they can only be there in between. So there's certain hours that you can come and visit, but they they can't limit anybody that want to come, because this is not their responsibility, it's Israel's responsibility. So when we come, we honor their regulations, okay, but we're under Israeli supervision and security. So any Muslim can come at any time from all over the world. They can enter from different gates of the Muslim quarter, which is these little houses you can see around. Okay, there's several entrances up. You can go in, but if you're non-Muslim, you can't go through them. You have to go through security and supervised by Israeli police. That's
You know,
pretty much the way it goes now.
This week, a friend of mine was there up on top this week, and so she got some rocks thrown at their group, and because they say no praying is allowed for anyone that's not Muslim. They can't. If they see your lips moving, they might think you're praying, and you're not allowed to pray up there to any god but Allah. And so she got a rock thrown, but it didn't hit her. It just was near her foot. But many times rocks are thrown, and it almost seems like the world thinks that just because we're praying in our holiest site in Israel, that it's like we're trying to start World War III, but we're not. You
see, here's the issue, and this is a big issue though. But the issue is this: you see, the Muslims want to make sure that everybody knows and the world knows that this site is their site. They want to emphasize that it belongs to them. They own it. This is their own possession. And religiously, there is no room for anybody else but Muslims. They emphasize it, and according to that issue, all the rockets fly and everything. Just because of that, if they feel that somebody's trying to claim that this is not Muslim place, they lose it, you know, they go wild. That is why there are people always watching when the groups come in, non-Muslims groups, and if they see an even, I mean, I had groups, somebody put a hand on the marble of the Dome of the Rock just to feel how it feels. Okay, immediately the group was accused of praying, and immediately they were literally just ushered out. I mean, they had to run out because people would get really almost violent toward them. I mean, and if Jews go up, religious Jew goes up, is surrounded by the guards, and then very often when the Muslims see that that's the situation, then they begin to shout Allahu Akbar, and they just begin to make a mess. And so just to why is that? In order for the world to see that this is their property. You can't claim anything. Don't touch it. It's like just don't touch it. It's their place. And that is the root of the whole thing. It's more of a political agenda, of course. I mean, you can understand it. It's a political agenda that they have. Of course, you disagree with their agenda. It doesn't matter. That's why they do it, what they do. Okay.
Gotcha. Thanks.
So let's move on a little bit, so we can just a little bit understand how it was in the time of the New Testament. In the time of the New Testament, we have a main entrance from the south. Here they are, the double gates, so double and triple gate. These steps, by the way, here they are on the top left corner. Here they are. They're original, renovated. Part of them are still original. The gates through which the pilgrims, which the disciples of Yeshua, Jesus and the disciples, they all went up these steps up, and then they entered into those doors. Okay, there's even a fragment right now. These, of course, gates don't exist, but there's still fragment of an arch that you can see originally inside the wall from the fame and the glory of the temple. And that if you remember, disciples of Yeshua, they said to him, look at the beautiful structures. And he told them, I surely tell you, stone upon stone, everything will be destroyed. And everything, it was just terrible, you know, in comparison to what it was look like. And the ruins is just absolutely terrible. So the entrances from the south, you can see from the west and south entrances. Here they are again, the model of how the temple was, how the streets was. Here you can see the street that led south, and pilgrims went up the street from the pool of Siloam at the city of David up right into toward the temple. I mean, think about it. This is one of the most beautiful buildings in the world 2,000 years ago. The Greek and Roman scholars, historians, they said, if you have not seen the temple in Jerusalem, you have not seen a beautiful thing in your life. This is absolutely phenomenal. I also want you to note this red square over here, which is called the Western Wall. When you approach and we think, what is Western Wall? And we'll come back to the Western Wall here. Let me just jump on to what is Western Wall? Western Wall is a fragment of one of the retaining walls of the platform on which the temple stood. And the Jews, they had been coming and weeping for the destruction of the temple all of those years, especially on the Tish B'Av, on the 9th of Av. We just had that day of memory and fasting for the religious Jews, that the temple was destroyed. And that's why the mourning and the wailing, that some people call the Wailing Wall, a place that they would come. But why even only this section? First of all, because the rest, we had Muslim buildings around, so it was difficult to come. And the second reason why Jews particularly chose a Western Wall was because this is closer to the back side of the temple. What is at the back side of the temple? The Holy of Holies. And so if you come from the west, you come from behind, you get closer. The closest you can get to the place where the presence of God would dwell. Okay, and there are many traditions, Jewish scholars and the sages, they write that that the presence of God, the glory of God have never left the Western Wall up until today. This is the holiest place in the world for the Jews. Okay, let me go back here and just a little bit speak about the temple compound so we can understand how it worked. First of all, there is a big court on the outside, not in this compound. Okay, the big court you saw the whole platform here, where my cursor is here. All of this around the temple compound, around it. This is called the Court of Gentiles. It was called the Court of Gentiles because Gentiles, nations, people from the nations could come and worship God of Israel. They were able to do that. Let me give you a couple of examples from the Bible. One of them is Cornelius. You remember Cornelius? Cornelius, Roman centurion who honored God. What does it mean to honor God? In their day, I'm not talking about today, but in their day, it means that he joined himself to the way God was asked to be worshipped. In other words, he would come to the high holidays. He would come to Jerusalem. He could not enter into the compound. He's not a Jew, but he was there at the Court of Gentiles bringing offerings, praying to God always. Okay, remember that. So just think about it. All of those people called God-fearers, right? Or the proselytes. They were those who joined themselves to the people of God, and honored the way that they worship God, because there was no alternative. That's how they worship. So he would come in the Court of Gentiles, and many others would come as well. This gate here, the east gate of the compound, on it was a sign. There was an inscription on top of the doors, and it said, if you're not a Jew, you cannot enter by penalty of death. Only the Jews could enter into this section, and this is called the Court of Women. Women's court had different sections. Here they are. different areas. Not only women, of course, women and men, but then there is this round steps. You see that, like a round steps that you go up into this corridor, and this corridor called the men's court. So the man could go up to the steps to be in the corridor to look into the inner courts. The inner courts of the temple, where the altar is, okay, where the laver is, where the place of slaughtering, only priests and Levites are there. And then inside the building itself, only priests are allowed to go. And then inside deep there's of course the veil, and only one time a year high priest could go in on the Day of Atonement in. So let me just give us one other example. In the epistle of Paul to Ephesians, a letter to Ephesians, Paul writes that he, Yeshua, Jesus, is himself is our peace, who made both one and brought down or destroyed through his flesh the wall of partition or the wall of separation. So what is the wall that separated the two, right? So first of all, you have this wall here, the wall that separated the Jews and non-Jews on their journey to God, on their journey to get closer to God. The wall, the middle wall of separation, because here Jews and Gentiles would separate. They could not come any farther together. Okay, so he speaks in the context while this building is standing. You see, we see what I'm saying? When you read Ephesians, you have to imagine that Paul writes in the time when this is standing like that. So the wall of separation, of partition that separates people from the holiness, how farther in you can come, what is your condition as a non-Jew can be. You will never be as close as the Jews because of the wall and the gate, but he breaks that wall. And so then it's not only this wall, but then again another stage, how holy you can be now, how holy closer you can come. Of course, this is all also broken. So there's no male, no female, no Greek, nor slave. Remember that. No Jew, no Greek. Because through his flesh, we have all, right? You have all an access to the Father, and not into the temple made with hands, but up into the temple in heaven. So you see that this is just a beautiful way of seeing how the context gives us some insight. Now, I want to...
A quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tanya, a woman, because you're talking about the court of the women, Tanya Pirisol asks, she said, how could there be a tomb below, even in legend, because even if it was Melchizedek's tomb, the high priests aren't allowed to go on top of tombs. So how could that be there? It has to be a different place where the Muslim Dome of the Rock tomb, if that was the tomb of Melchizedek, she's saying it couldn't be the exact spot where this is because the high priest can't walk on it.
Yeah, right. Absolutely right. The issue is that the idea about a tomb, it's something that has been suggested by a couple of scholars in modern time about the cave that is there. Is it proved? No, it's just an idea. They suggest there could be a cave, maybe a burial cave, ancient, maybe yes, maybe not. It could be, maybe it was there. It's absolutely possible what you're saying, Tanya, about that, maybe, because if they can prove that that's the case, then they say, oh, definitely that was not the side of the temple because it couldn't be on top of the tomb. Number one. Number two, it could be something that was cleaned. It could be something that was changed. But I want to challenge you here that if you stick with us farther on, today we won't have the time, but on the second session of the Temple Mount, then when we go deeper into the Bible, then we'll bring up the events that are even before, that the story of Melchizedek, and how does Melchizedek tie in, and how does Abraham tie in, and how does the whole thing of the end times tied into this location. So the reason I mentioned about the tomb is because somebody of the scholars suggested it. It was written in one of the research. So it's not proved. It's just an idea, and they just don't know. But we don't know. The Muslims think it's the cave that David made. They honor David as a prophet, and David made it in order to pray to Allah toward Mecca. Kind of funny, but anyway. Anyhow,
okay.
Yeah. So,
nice.
but it's a good comment. It's a good comment. That's true. It's problematic. We don't know.
Right.
All right. Now, by the way, continuation to that question. Let me bring this in and a little bit, and maybe even finish right now with that for today, unless we want to go on. But here is something that's been running in the mainstream media for a while in the recent few years. Could many be that wrong? Okay, could many be that wrong about what? About the location. The location is the big issue. I'll explain to you why it's a big issue. But here's what people say, and you might have seen some videos on it. There are many videos on YouTube on it, and I've read and I've seen all of them, or most of them at least. Anyhow, what they say is this. They say they bring an idea and they say, okay, listen, actually, the temple was not on the Temple Mount. Actually, the Temple Mount is not the Temple Mount. But the Temple Mount, look at this, it's actually a Roman fort. It's a Roman fort, and there was never a temple on it. But the temple was right on the southern part in the area that is called the City of David. Here is, if you look at the modern, here, look at the red line that I pointed here. Here it is. This is the southern wall. Here's the highway, and this is a slope, upper section of the slope here. That's called the City of David Excavations. Okay, City of David here, and the blue line is the city of David today, back in the day. So if you look here, City of David here, this is an artistic model here. The City of David, and right above City of David was the temple. Here's City of David. Right above City of David was the temple. How above? That close or that above? That's a big question. So they challenge.
There's this guy called Eli Shukran who says that he thought he found something there that would suggest it, the bell of the high priest, and so on.
There was a bell of a high priest found. It was found under the street into the sewage canal, and we know from the books of Josephus that people were hiding themselves in the sewage canals under the Roman streets to hide from the Romans. It's no wonder we found. But hold on a moment before we touch, archaeologists. The idea is very clear here, very simple. They say this, that the measurements of the Temple Mount is actually exactly fitting to the measurements of any other Roman fort in other parts of the world from the time. Also, they say that doesn't make sense the amount of soldiers that was sent in the book of Acts to escort Paul to Caesarea, from a little fort that we know from the model. It's just a little small fort attached to the northern wall, Fort of Antonia. Doesn't make any sense. It could not hold so many soldiers. There had to be much bigger area. And another idea behind it says that, well, archaeologically, there's no proof of the temples here because there was no temple here, never. It's just a Roman fort where the 10th Legion was located. And the steps are to the Roman fort, and etc. However, the temple also has to be next to a spring of water. In the City of David, there is a big spring that's called Gihon Spring. Huge spring that would be like a geyser type of spring that could be used for purification and cleaning all of the blood and all of the mass with the sacrifices. So they say that all the chances are we've been looking in the wrong place. Okay, this is what these theory speaks. We have to look for the temple in the city of David. But if until today, by the way, city of David is the longest in the world excavation site. There've been more years of excavations, more than any other site in the world, as far as I know, in the city of David. It's been digging for decades in the city of David, top of the world archaeologists. And they say, well, why don't you find any artifacts, anything from the temple? And so the people that suggest this theory, they say, well, because Jesus said there would be no stone upon stone left, everything will be destroyed, so that's why we cannot find anything. Okay, now after thinking that this theory is not supported by any archaeologist or anybody else who understands in archaeology, including myself, if you look at the foundation of this theory and you compare it to archaeological findings in the city of David, because this area that they claim where was the temple has been excavated for decades. I'm talking decades. I've talked to some archaeologists and they say, nonsense. If there would be a temple there, we would find something. It's impossible that we've been digging and find nothing at all that could even direct an idea. But the people who present this theory are not archaeologists. None of them is. And so I would put a big question mark under it. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that is less likely possible. Okay, and probably the reason why this agenda is being presented, I think that there is something behind it that is more political rather than a desire to find a location. I think it's much more a political agenda, again, in order to have the temple rebuilt. Everybody wants to see the temple rebuilt. Everybody. So many Christians want to see the temple rebuilt. Christians think that by helping the rebuilding of the temple, they are hastening the day of the Lord. I argue that. I think that's not that is not right approach. It's not biblical approach whatsoever. But however, many Jews want to see the temple built. Many Christians want to see the third temple built. And so the location where could make a lot of difference. Why? Because if somebody would believe that the temple is not on where we think it should be in the Temple Mount, but it's actually in the city of David, how long you think it will take to rebuild it? It will be done like that. It will be done in a moment. Okay, it would be done in a moment, because you don't need to contest with Muslims to build a temple in the city of David. It's under Israeli land. Okay, there's no waqf, there's no religious site on the city of David. If somebody would prove that it's actually there, they would rebuild it immediately. Okay, so there's a lot of that. That's what I'm thinking, that there's much more political agenda behind it rather than real desire of finding. But the time will show, because city of David is still being excavated. Okay. So this is an introduction, okay, like a general overview of the Temple Mount. Now, from here on, we could move into a biblical approach from Genesis, really from Genesis into the prophets, and paralleling the words of the prophets and the location of the Temple Mount as being a place of the judgment of the nations at the end times. And this is according to the prophets, according to Zechariah, it's according to other prophets as well. So thank you for being with me. I would love to answer questions if you have some.
Oh, there were so many questions. I didn't bring them all up because there's, and maybe you could stop sharing screen. So there was so many questions, but I didn't bring them all up because of time. but people really were getting involved from Africa, from Europe, from Asia, and of course from the Americas. So like the four corners, and people want to watch this later as well. But I just want to thank you for taking this time and sharing, and I can't wait for the next episodes coming up where we delve deeper, not only here, but in other places throughout Israel. It's so interesting. People saying it's so interesting. It's such a eye-opening to actually see things that are often overlooked when you just have kind of a politicized view. And I think I could just encourage people that they need to start getting their answers from the Bible and from history, and stop getting it from all this, fake news and agenda-based. Just the truth will set you free, and especially when it's on the news all the time. You got Jerusalem, and it's over 800 times in the scriptures in different names. This spot in different names is mentioned over 800 times. And I know there's in Arabic, there's 16 ways to say this spot, this holy spot. Al-Quds is one of them, the holy place. And not even one of the 16 types of ways of saying this in Arabic is mentioned in the Quran. Not one of the 16 types, but 800 times it's mentioned in the. And I know that I'll just make an unashamed plug for my wife's necklaces. I mean, she makes these necklaces. I don't have it here, but it says "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem," and it's for Christians to wear, because I really believe if we care about God and we know what makes God happy. What makes God happy is that, well, the children of Israel return, and it makes him happy that his plan and prophetic purpose is happening in this world. And pray for the peace of Jerusalem. God wants there to be peace in Jerusalem. It's his will that there will be peace and not fighting. And when we're praying for that, we're agreeing with what makes him happy. And so this necklace my wife makes, I don't have it here, but she makes these, it's a little dove of peace. And so Christians around the world, like the Times of Israel picked it up, and they did an article on it, and people bought these. And so I think it's just a good thing to remember that Yeshua, he cried over this city. He cried over this. He gave his life here and rose here. Wow, there's so much. But so everyone
he's coming back. He's coming back to sit right in here and to make his throne right on this mountain. And I promise that you'll see this in the scripture next time we're together, and you'll be so excited about what's coming. Much more than, we're moving toward the greatness, okay? And maybe people say, oh, the world is going to an end. It will, but before total destruction by fire, this world will have a king ruling at least 1,000 years from this mountain that is behind me. So this Absolutely. Is such a good news. We can be encouraged.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll throw one last question before you go. I know you got to go, but really quick, Cindy Roth, friend of ours, she said, people have offered sacrifices in various places. Noah, Abraham offered there too, but do our people really need the temple to be reestablished for the Temple Institute or whoever to begin to reestablish sacrifice? I know some religious people want to reestablish sacrifices. Do they need the temple, in your opinion, to be rebuilt?
Absolutely. For that? This is not my opinion. This is the opinion of the Bible. Because in the scriptures, there are several places in Deuteronomy and etc. on and other places as well, that there is only one location where the sacrifices will be brought, and that's the temple. It's not a question, it's a fact. Now, if you ask, wait a minute, during the biblical times, there were altars elsewhere, not only in the temple. It's true. Those were altars that did not deal with sin offerings. They dealt with just worship, but they did not deal with the whole issue of remission of sins. So in the Jewish mind, in order to have sins removed, you have to have a temple and the altar and do it according to the rules of the temple. For those who believe that Yeshua, the perfect Lamb of God, has paid and dealt with all the sin for us, we don't need any other sacrifices whatsoever. But those who don't believe in the perfect Lamb of God, they will want to do it, and there is no other possibility in the world but to have an altar built in the temple. By the way, let me just throw it in there just to get you excited. There are a very large movement and movements of Orthodox religious activists and people that are moving toward reestablishment of the temple. In fact, they are practicing the sacrifices each year. For Passover, they're practicing how they are going to slaughter lambs and do the whole procedure with the Levites. They're practicing every single year right under the Temple Mount. In other words, right next door to the Temple Mount, because nobody's letting them up because it's illegal, right, according to the regulations. But they're still trying to do it. They're trying to sneak in, in Passover. They're trying to slaughter a sheep right on the top of the platform, even if the Muslims will kill them. They don't care. They just want to do it. I mean, I've watched a documentary on it recently. It is mind-blowing how far the Jewish religious people will go in order to do this, even if it will, spark a third world war. They don't care.
Well, there's been many attempts at rebuilding since the temple was destroyed in 70 CE. There's been attempts with the Bar Kokhba revolt, with Emperor Julian, whatever his name was, and there was attempts with the Sassanid Visal state. Even some Muslims talked about giving money towards a third temple. The Mongol raids. There's when I first made my Aliyah, the Temple Mount Faithful and Gershom Solomon. I don't know if you've ever heard this name, Gershom Solomon. He's one of the Temple Mount Faithful. So he, along with Rabbi Shlomo Goren, and after 67, there was lots of people that are like, wow, now we have the thing. And so when I made Aliyah, which was like 99 or 98, and so there was this guy called one of the Temple Mount Faithful, and he's like, let's lay the cornerstone. So they had this big cornerstone for the third temple, and they were trying to lay it, and then the police, and then the rocks, and it was one of my first experiences in the land of Israel as an Israeli. I was a young boy, 15 years old, and I was like, this place is crazy. But it will happen, right? The third temple will be built. Ezekiel's temple will be built sometime, and prayer will return for all people for a while at least. Wow.
Amen. Wow. Thank you, Chaim. Looking forward.
Thank you. What an honor. Everyone said thank you. Everyone's very, very, very honored and blessed by your taking this time. And I can't wait for the next one. Let's get it happening soon. And Shabbat Shalom to you and your family.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, guys.
God bless.